Welcome back. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of three neighboring giants, India, China, and Pakistan. They all stepped onto the world stage at roughly the same time, but fast forward 70 or so years, and wow, their journeys couldn't be more different.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How does this happen? How do three nations, all starting from a similar point, end up on such wildly different paths? It's a story that gets to the heart of what shapes the lives of billions.
To really get our heads around this, we've got to rewind the clock. Let's go back to their shared starting line in the middle of the 20th century because their beginning is actually surprisingly similar.
So you can see right here, they all basically hit the start button within just a few years of each other. But the really amazing part is how they all kicked off their economic journeys. Each one of them rolled out 5-year plans. This very structured, top-down, state-led approach to development. And what's really fascinating is that, at first, India and Pakistan looked like they were reading from the exact same playbook. Both went all in on creating big public sectors and pouring a ton of money into social development.
Okay, so on the surface, they look similar, right? But underneath, that's where the story gets really interesting. You had three totally different political engines running the show. India, the world's biggest democracy. Pakistan, with its militarist power structure. And China, a classic command economy where the state called all the shots. This single difference would change everything that came next.
All right, let's talk about China, because their approach was, well, it was on another level entirely. They launched these massive, radical, top-down campaigns to completely remake their society and economy, and fast.
First up, you have the Great Leap Forward in 1958. This was a mind-bogglingly ambitious plan. They wanted to industrialize practically overnight, literally telling people to set up little steel furnaces in their backyards. Can you imagine?
And while all that was happening, they were completely revolutionizing agriculture with the commune system. We're talking about pooling all the land, all the labor, and look at that number. By 1958, 26,000 communes covered pretty much the entire farming population. Just wow.
Now, you might think that when China started its reforms in '78, they just flipped a switch to a market economy. But nope, they did something really clever called dual pricing. Think of it this way. Farmers had to sell a certain amount to the government at a fixed price, but anything extra, they could sell that on the open market for more money. It was a genius way to get people to produce more without totally shocking the system.
And then, of course, there's the policy everyone's heard of, the one-child norm from the late 70s. This wasn't just an economic experiment. It was a massive social engineering project designed to hit the brakes on population growth. And boy, did it have a profound impact for generations to come.
So you have all these big top-down policies, but what did it actually mean for the millions of people on the ground? Well, if you look at the numbers, the story becomes crystal clear.
Just look at this chart. It speaks for itself. By 2015, Pakistan's population growth was flying high at 2.1% a year. China, a tiny 0.5%. To put that into perspective, Pakistan's population was growing more than 4 times faster. That is a massive difference.
And that difference has all these knock-on effects, right? You can see it here. China's policies led to a super low fertility rate and, kind of surprisingly, the lowest population density of the three. Meanwhile, Pakistan's fertility rate stayed really high, and that's what was fueling that big population boom.
But here's something that's, it's pretty sobering. Despite all these differences in politics and economics, they all share this one tragic problem, a sex ratio that's skewed against females. And the reason? A deeply ingrained cultural preference for a son that no system has managed to overcome.
Okay, so let's jump to the present day. After all these decades of different choices, what does the scorecard actually look like? How did it all turn out?
So, let's start with India. We all know China became the world's factory, a manufacturing powerhouse, but India took a different route. Its economic engine isn't manufacturing, it's this huge, booming service sector. That's what's really driving their growth.
Now, when we shift from economics to social well-being, the picture gets a lot more complex. In Pakistan, for example, maternal mortality has been a persistent, major challenge. And that's not just a statistic, It tells you a whole lot about the healthcare system and how accessible it is for women. And that same challenge, sadly, extends to the very youngest. The infant mortality rate in Pakistan is also high compared to its neighbors. So you see, these two things together point to some really tough, systemic public health issues.
Over in India, you find a different, and honestly a pretty surprising paradox. You've got this booming economy, right? But at the same time, the country is facing a huge challenge with child nutrition. In fact, the proportion of undernourished kids is even higher than in Pakistan. It's a really stark reminder that a rising economy doesn't automatically lift up everyone.
But there's one area where China is the clear leader, and it's a big one: sanitation. They have done a much, much better job than either India or Pakistan at giving their people access to clean, improved sanitation. And that's absolutely crucial for preventing disease and just improving the basic quality of life.
Okay, so let's try and put all the pieces together. We've seen these three incredibly different outcomes. Why? What were the key ingredients that sent them down these separate paths?
And really, here's the bottom line. There's no single magic bullet. It was a mix of things. For China, it was all about those aggressive state-led reforms, massive infrastructure spending, and that strict population control. For India, its democratic system and that pivot towards the service industry were key. And for Pakistan, its story has been shaped so much by political instability and its reliance on things like foreign aid and money sent home from abroad.
You know, this whole story, it isn't just a history lesson. It's like a giant, real-world experiment that shows how politics, policy, and culture all weave together to shape a country's future. It really makes you think. With three such different pasts, what lessons do they hold for all of us in our shared global future?